A year ago, I was on an exchange program in Mexico. Like most exchange students, I spent my weekends exploring the country, immersing myself in its culture and beauty. Between semesters, my best friend Ben and I planned a long backpacking trip across Mexico. We didn't have a rigid itinerary, just a rough idea of places to visit. We wanted to stay flexible, letting the journey unfold naturally. As our trip neared its end, we decided to fly out from a nearby city that offered cheap flights. The city wasn't exactly a tourist hotspot, but it was convenient. We found a listing on Airbnb, a room in a house with a pool, run by a couple. The pictures looked decent, and the price was unbeatable. Plus, the host could speak our native language, which was a bonus. We took a bus to the city. When we arrived, it was already dark. Unfortunately, the bus driver refused to drop us off at the airport, leaving us stranded on the side of a highway. The area was deserted, and the air felt heavy with tension. We called the Airbnb host, and the husband agreed to pick us up. When the car arrived, I felt a chill. The man behind the wheel was imposing, with a rugged face that could have been straight out of a gangster movie. His silence was unnerving. I tried to make small talk, but he only responded with grunts or ignored me altogether. Ben and I exchanged uneasy glances but kept quiet. What choice did we have? The ride felt like an eternity. We turned off the main road onto a gravel path lined with massive houses, each surrounded by tall walls topped with barbed wire. It felt more like a fortress compound than a residential neighborhood. The house we arrived at was impressive but isolated. The man's wife greeted us warmly. She was chatty and friendly, a stark contrast to her husband. She had even prepared dinner for us. As we ate, the man sat in silence, staring off into the distance. After dinner, we were exhausted and went straight to bed. The next morning, the weather was gloomy, so we decided to explore the town. By the time we returned, it was dark. The air felt thick with humidity, so we jumped into the pool to cool off. The wife joined us, making casual conversation. At some point, Ben asked how they afforded such a luxurious home. The wife deflected, mentioning that her husband had built most of it himself. The way she spoke about it made it clear we had touched on a sensitive topic. We quickly changed the subject. Later that evening, we sat on the terrace, enjoying the night air. We asked the wife if it would be okay to smoke a cigarette. She found the request amusing and called out to her husband, who merely laughed. "Go ahead," she said, waving her hand dismissively. We lit our cigarettes, but the couple soon joined us. The conversation took a bizarre turn. They started asking strange questions: where we bought the cigarettes, how much they cost back home, and so on. The wife casually mentioned they had considered selling cigarettes as a side hustle, but decided against it because it was dangerous. Too many people died doing that, she said. My husband knows all about it. Her husband, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "I used to handle problems for people like that," he said, his voice flat. "When I was 16, I worked for some powerful people. I felt the blood drain from my face." Was he implying what I thought he was? The nonchalant way he spoke made it even more chilling. I texted Ben under the table, asking if he had caught the same vibe. His reply came quickly: "Yeah, let's stay calm." As if things weren't tense enough, the man stood up and disappeared inside. When he returned, he was holding a large, wrapped package. He unwrapped it to reveal a brick of something. Breaking off pieces, he began rolling a cigarette. But it was clear this wasn't just tobacco. He offered it to us, but we politely declined. His eyes narrowed, but he didn't press the issue. Then, out of nowhere, we heard a series of loud bangs. The wife jumped, her face pale. "What was that?" she asked. 9mm, the man replied casually. I froze. "Gunshots? Here?" A few minutes later, more shots rang out, closer this time. The wife was visibly shaken, asking if they should go inside. The man shrugged. "They're probably just shooting at something." "It's fine," at what she pressed. "People." He leaned back in his chair. I didn't hear any screams yet. That sentence hit me like a punch to the gut. The way he said it, so calmly, so detached, it was the most terrifying thing I had ever heard. Ben and I excused ourselves and went to our room. Once inside, we locked the door and pushed furniture against it. We whispered furiously, debating what to do. Running wasn't an option, we were in the middle of nowhere, and it was pitch black outside. We're safer here, Ben reasoned. He won't hurt us. We're guests. I wasn't so sure, but I nodded. We spent the night wide awake, jumping at every sound. The gunshots had stopped, but the silence was almost worse. The tension was suffocating. At dawn, we quietly packed our bags and crept out of the room. The house was eerily silent. We found the wife in the kitchen, cheerful as ever, making breakfast. The husband was nowhere to be seen. We have to catch our flight, Ben lied. She smiled and waved us off. Safe travels. The drive to the airport was surreal. The whole experience felt like a fever dream. When we finally reached security, I exhaled for the first time in hours. Even being patted down felt like a blessing. As the plane took off, I looked out the window, feeling a mix of relief and disbelief. We had survived a night in a house with a man who had casually confessed to murder. It was a story I would never forget and one I hope to never relive.